So let's talk about quality, about Agile, and let's talk about processes. A few words about myself. Who attended my talks? Oh, you're new guys. Hi everyone, I'm Igor Goldshmidt. I happened to become a QA manager. I wanted to bring a dress shirt, but I forgot it at home. Therefore, I'm wearing a t-shirt. I'm a blogger, a speaker, senior QA engineer. Here I'm wearing a dress shirt. Serious guy. I was inspired by Julia Burmatova's blog post. It would be fun if she was in the room. So one of her quotation says, "It is within testers' powers to make messy, to undo the mess that we're in." Who considers themselves to be testers? And what are the rest? Who are they? You don't test anything? Who are QA engineers? What about automation experts? Kudos, respect for attending my talk. Do you work in Agile or Android? Now I see. Welcome. So it all began when it occurred to me that bottle didn't like that question and it fell down to the floor. I'll open it just in case. There you go. I must be jumping up and down the stage. So we talked about undoing the mess, uncluttering things. So Julia Burmatova represents the quality laboratory, and they write a lot of interesting things. So Agile and processes, what does this have to do with messes? I mean, I apologize for mispronouncing it. I keep mispronouncing it. Sorry. Why did they write it down? Because you are here. When I want to sell my presentations, I always put the word Agile on the front page. Secondly, concerning the clutter and mess, typically it happens in those countries where they use the word Agile. So they implemented Agile and they no longer have this or that. I think you all encounter that. The company switches to Agile and it is bound to have mess and clutter on their hands. I worked in Agile teams as my background. Who believe that testers should be engaged in processes? Looks like it's an advanced crowd. Who thinks you don't need to do that? Those who think that you don't have to do that, I need a volunteer. So you're a dummy, right? So here's what you gotta do. This is a glass from the coffee break with peanuts. There are almonds, dried fruit, other nuts. I want you to count them and tell us how many of which kind are in there. So you spilled it, right? All of that. Oh, shucks, let me help you. I'll give you another glass to put things in. How many glasses do you need? almond, nuts, and dried fruit. What if I bring you a chair? Will it make things comfortable for you? We don't have any chairs to spare. What if I give you a desk so that you don't have to squat? Of course, it's much better to squat down. I have a chair. Do you care to sit down? I need 3 glasses, but I don't have the 3rd glass. Yeah, you gotta count them. Okay, let me take that away. Apart from teasing people, I think that if she had a table and 3 glasses, symbolizing 3 groups, and we would put nuts in respective glasses and count them, and if we had a piece of paper to write down on, I think that task would have been accomplished much faster. So what was it that I tried to describe? I'm sorry, I apologize for this. I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to mess things up here on the stage. We gotta clean it up. Well, I shot myself in the foot. Testers are creative folks. Do you still believe that processes and testing should not be combined? I also have a bag with pearl barley or buckwheat. I mean, no matter how much we want to escape the idea of testers who should tag along the project and then compare requirements and so on, nowadays, as we develop in agile environment, whether we like it or not, we have to do testing as well. So this is where I wanted to draw the line on this. I wanted to share a story about my friend named Monya. Here's Monya, senior QA engineer. He will be the protagonist. He was asked to join a company that uses which technique? Agile. And what implementation? Scrub. They use Scrub. So they said, we want you to join us. There is a mess in the team. You gotta set up processes. Monya is a serious expert, no nonsense, joining our team, trying to undo the mess. Obviously, when he started looking at the implementation, he saw that first there should be processes and tools. Then you need to have this animation is awesome. Then you need to have documentation, planning. Anyone against documentation or records? Go read the manifesto. He expected that, but it didn't happen. Didn't hear about that? So the word agile meant being flexible. Documents were written in Jira, partly and partly on something else, and no planning was made because this is the Agile. Whoever worked in Agile must have confronted that. Then he proceeded to look at Scrum framework workflow with sprints. Does everybody have?
По полной? Ты сколько там, 2 недели? О, да. Second, he expected, like in the same as in the Scrum framework, the team will decide themselves what should be put into sprint. Please raise up your hands if it happens in your company as well. Let's not change the topic of today's presentation. The second expectation was that the improvements will continue. There'll be continuous improvement process. Well, but reality turned out to be different. Some people heard of it, some people didn't. The length of sprint increased, and it happened at the stage when they were late and we were not on time. Sometimes the product manager or team lead mentioned about this. Task development was a continuous ceremony. We were asked what was good about the sprint, what was bad. After next sprint, you come and tell the same, but nothing is happening. That's why when you come to a meeting inside your company, okay, and raise this question, just say, okay, forget about it. But you say, okay, we have to do it because we are using Scrum. After that, there has come a moment to investigate what really happens with Agile testing. Does anyone read the book by Miss Christie, Agile Testing? Well, respect. Everything could have been read there, but since most of you have not read this book, I will tell you. Agile testing assumes that we have shift left, we have bugs preventing, testing understanding. Do you know what test understanding is? What's the difference between functional testing and just testing? This implies that when you test, you understand what you test, not just simply collect the functionality of a feature that you have been given and just test the functionality. You do understand what the business goal of the new feature is. I'd be happy to make a separate presentation on this sometime later, possibly. Another aspect is team responsibility. Uh, well, if you don't see it, well, let's leave it. Next time I'll put up the slides higher. Well, the shift left was more of a shift right because everyone worked under the iteration that were given features. Nobody heard about bug prevention. And when we proposed to discuss something to prevent bugs, they were told, okay, what's the point? Anyway, you will detect bugs anyhow once you open the test. Nobody heard about team responsibility because that guy, Moya, was responsible and in the end he was guilty. Of course, the situation was agile, there was a scrum, but implementation didn't go smoothly. Apart from all of this chaos, and thanks to this chaos, there are other critical aspects in the work. First of all, since the team was responsible for the quality, sometimes the developers gave Moya badly developed features, which increased testing time a lot. Does it happen in your companies? Well, I say it does. This can be defined by the following way, and I was thinking how we could describe this, let's say this hill. The diagram reflects a situation when a feature has been handed over and within the first 4 hours you open up and you see 50 bugs because nobody had even thought about them. Nobody has even tried to prevent bugs. That is why bugs in the initial functionality required Moya to spend a lot of time. And instead of finding business logics in the bugs, he simply had to open up a lot of basic functionalities and correct them. It means that the time was spent wrongly. All things considered, look, who of you has the similar sprint, a similar time schedule of the sprint? I forgot to put the picture of Moya. Is he smiling? I don't know how many developers you have per tester. Maybe I'll put the question the other way around. How many developers do you have per tester? Hands up if you have 4, hands up if you have more, hands up if you have more than 6. Well, please accept my sincere sympathy. Well, imagine all these counts has to be performed by one person. On top there is that hill of bugs, and we just open the basic functional tests, and we're spending our time on this. How do you cope with this situation? Some of you may panic, yes. Sometimes you just sit quietly, try to connect on Friday and close it down. Or then the cleaner comes at 10 in the evening and you say, oh, hello, what are you doing here? I'm working here. I've got a sprint, I've got agile. Everything is flexible. That's why I've got flexible working hours. Well, it's a good joke, actually. Should remember this. I didn't invent it beforehand. All this mess should have been solved and should have been put into order. How to clear up the mess? Several things have to be done. Consider the processes of testing is important. After our testimonia realized the chaos with the testing, he decided to look deeper into the processes because he was the only person who was supposed to build the tests. There was no test documentation in their teams. Do you have test documentation? As the other people who don't? Okay, some of you know that there might be no test documentation. That's why it's just not available. There are no key processes established. It's not clear when planning, analysis and design is being done. There is no regression testing. Well, I also like one of the approach of the Agile. Okay, perform the regressive testing because you still have a couple of hours before deployment. Well, sanity. Why sanity check? If we have done certain changes in the code, I only revised several parameters. Don't worry, everything is going to be all right. That's what Moya looks like when he says, guys, it should be the other way around. Summing it all up, the problem in the Agile or a Scrum team is the problem of working in the general development environment and the problem in the testing environment. This way or another, we got stuck in the process development. Some of them keep it only because we started to use Agile. That was supposed to be our silver bullet, and that was supposed to do everything in the nicest and the best way as described and told in all the conferences and the meetings. The next questions that was raised in front of Monia is the tester is the key indicator of the order in the team. Do you agree with that? Well, I see that you do. Well, I've done a lot of performance to prove it. However, if something doesn't work within the team, we're the ones to blame. Somebody forgot to update the requirements or some more things. Eventually, the report was presented, some tests have been done, somebody forgot to upload the latest features, and we're thinking, oh guys, everything is working in such a nice and cool way. Then, again, we're the ones to blame. If not us, then who should raise the flag indicating the problems? That's why Monia decided to check and put everything in order. First thing which he had to do is to prioritize the testing and single out the critical points. And being pressed for time, he had to establish the test process, to fine-tune it, and somehow affect the development process. When I told my acquaintance from Russia, who is a test developer, and I told him that the tester must influence the development process, then he told me, okay, please explain yourself, especially when it comes to the team that works in the remote mode. But since we're using Agile, whatever you call it, we have to try how it works. Then the question, should a tester know the age of its product? Does anybody know what is the age of a product? I'm talking about the software. Okay, maybe age or maturity. How can I better put it? Do you know what it is? Well, I'll tell you. How do you decide what and how to test and what is critical to be tested at a particular stage? The answer is, wow, did you hear? You have to speak to the business sector, speak to the product team, marketing team, and learn at which development cycle your product is at the moment. Have you ever seen such kind of a diagram? Wow. Okay, a couple of you did. So it means that you know that all the products has the product development life cycle, starting from entering the company and having the first release, and when you enter in the bank, and sales are motivating by setting up additional features and the product is ready, you should well understand, in order to be able to prioritize your tests, at which stage of life cycle your product is. One of the options is for you to speak with the business development team and the marketing team and to learn from them at which stage we are now. Well, the business sector will think, okay, we are cool because he's asking, and eventually he will tell you at which stage the product development cycle is because it's all related to what kind of works you are going to perform. The best reference could be that the best analogy of Windows.8 is here. It's not being developed any longer. Windows 10 is in that part of the diagram. So you see, now you could understand, based on this example, where the product is. How does it help us with testing? Let's imagine a situation. The target of Monia's companies was to stabilize the audience. In the end of the day, he asked the product manager at which stage the product is, and he was given a reply that we are now trying to stabilize our audience with the prospect of further audience growth. For instance, they were supposed to increase the number of users because this is a KPI indicator. So he came and he checked what's the target at this stage, what's the goal, and the target was to attract regular active audience, audience that will be using your product regularly. The second aspect is metrics. There are two key functionalities, saying that metrics should be continuous and regular. How this can be applied to testing? It is important for us to know that the customer can continuously use the product. We may have more ideas, but even now, from information that you have proposed, is that for any kind of regression and sanity, it's important to have stability. I'm not talking about product performance, I'm talking about the stability of product before any kind of setup and updates, meaning you can open an app, touch it, hold it, check, and it works. And we need the feedback tools because at this particular stage, each product begins to develop, but then the business requires feedback. Collecting the analytical reports, collecting events, all kinds of things. All this becomes critical because if you release a new feature and no analytics is being collected about this feature, then marketing team and people from other department will coming to you and will be asking, what are you doing? Google Analytics doesn't show anything. That is why our testimonial identify critical test points. So, to minimize time and resources problem, he created a checkbox where he ticked the timing. Well, is it necessary that the tester deals with the process under Agile within the team? It It's a question, but I think you already understand what the answer is. Another idea which our testimony came across is that in the end of the day, any agile team, sometimes it could be just a scrum team from the very beginning, 8 people at the start. Sometimes there are 3 scrum teams. There are companies where there are more scrum teams, but in the end, agile team for implementation resembles in a way any kind of a company. This company is product owner. It can own part of the system. It can be responsible for a website, or it could own an office back system. And the company sets up internal processes for itself. The company is independent and decides on internal processes by itself. That's why Monia thought if agile team works in the same way as a smaller company, then they have to adapt the processes to adapt and to set up the business processes. Have you heard about TMMI? Well, it's good. TMMI, there is no need to read out everything. It's a model. I can explain what it means. If you open the QR code, you will read an article about TMMI. In the end of the day, this model allows for deciding for ourselves at which stage of development our company is and our team is, and which stage the tests procedures are being done. Well, I have only 15 minutes for my presentation. I hope we will be able to talk during the break. So we just take an available model. We don't invent anything. We don't add anything up, and only identify the stage at which we are at now. Then we see to which stage we would like to move. It's important to follow the order when going from stage to stage, because when Monia came initially at the enterprise, it was level 4, but he came to a company, it was at level 1. What he did is to apply the models available at level 4, such as test management process, implement at level 1. What do you think happened? Well, it was tough. It was very tough, and he thought, okay, I'm a senior guy. I'm cool. But then he realized that it's impossible to jump from level 1 to level 4. That's why there should be a slow and continuous movement from level 1 to level 2. At the initial level, there's no test documentation. The product isn't stable. The processes sometimes fail. Testing is more in setting up. What's the difference between the fine-tuning and testing? I usually compare this process with giving the car over to a mechanic for repair. After the car, fine-tuning is when the mechanic takes your car out and just drives right around the garage to check if the car is still available, still able to run after the maintenance and repair works, while the testing is when you test if all the processes are in place and are in operation. The model helps to identify what the test policy and strategy is. And he decided there's no need to do any test cases, to perform them and to develop test designs. We can also mention that a separate test environment is needed. By this stage, Monia has an action plan without any stages and without adding anything new up. And this action plan could be shared with the team. So if you reach the second level, then the processes are controlled and operational, and we will know what the results will be. We know what to aim at. QR code will lead you to more information that you could read later. Now we come to the stage when the team becomes mature. We need to be aware at which stage of maturity our team or our company is. Should the tester know this? The interpreter cannot hear the question. Yes, this is the model, which is called CMMI, and I see that some people heard about this model. Yes, the same way as before, there is no need to invent anything. You can just apply the model CMMI developed in the United States in the 80s for identification of car supplier companies' maturity level that were going to sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense. And the target was to identify whether the company was mature enough and whether the processes in the company were mature enough. So that's why the improvement in development process is quite similar to the CEMMI model. TMMI model was developed based on the CMMI model. This is happening quite often with certain tools applied in testing have previously been developed by the developers team. So development process requires further improvements as well all the time. It's important when you follow in the same procedure. First, you have to decide the level. How do you know that you're at the initial level? Do you have such people in your company that in case they leave, nobody would know what to do with the product? Guys, you're at the initial level. If you have such an employee in your company, in my case, such person was called Yossi. There are people who just save the deployment at 2 a.m. in the night. You call them, you tell them, they do something, and it works. But these are just heroic deeds of such persons, and you are not able to reproduce the processes. And this is the not successful approach because it significantly affects test performance. That's why we decide and try to go to some management level. Let's introduce planning, discipline, and let's try to document some of the minimum requirements of list.
And monitor in real time. Why did we come down to testing versus development? I mean, that's because testing means development. So if someone tells you, hey, dude said, come and tune up the testing process. If you come down and start tuning up the testing processes, you will find that this is development per se. If you happen to have a cold freeze next day, it means that you failed at what you did, and your testing wasn't worth anything. If you are inside a team, you have to explain to the others, telling the team, this is where we are, let's try to change that. If you have a team lead, try to sell it to him, saying, you are toiling over here, saving projects at 2 p.m. I know that nobody will fire you. Such processes is something that we have to deal with. And at the end of the day, this is the good tool to see where you're at, where you stand, to make sure you don't skip processes like you would do in an enterprise. It's the words of Monia. And it becomes critical to add a compass to the flexible or agile development. What does it mean to be a compass? It's important to appreciate what agile is. If you hear Kanban, it would entail all sorts of things. They say Kanban, but you say Kanban should have a bunch of other stuff. If you don't have that, then you're in Agile. And in Agile, you have other bunch of things. So tester should be a compass in values of Agile development. Because at the end of the day, who will be clearing up the mess? We will. A couple of takeaway lessons. It's important to understand that quality product is the result of quality work guaranteed by quality processes. In other words, you cannot do things in a qualitative way otherwise. Otherwise, you'll have to be putting in hours until 10 p.m. If you're QA engineers and you want to join startups, don't expect that you'd start with QA, because if you don't have processes, there is nothing to improve. If you are a QA engineer in a startup, you are most likely an engineer. And you will have to work a little before you can promote yourself to quality assurance. Two acknowledgements. Mikhail Dovgi with test maturity model. I borrowed a couple of ideas from him. Does QR code work? Great. And how to turn chaos into order by Julia. Mikhail provides a lot of hands-on ideas. Thank you, guys. Questions? What time do I got? 5 minutes. 5 minutes for questions. Thank you for the interesting topic. How does the role of QA and tester differ? In the context of your presentation, it appears, a question appears, should testing be done by testers? Maybe testing is part of QA. I mean, processes is up for QA. This is a great holy war. We're not going to unleash it. As a tester, you got to be engaged in testing processes, because testing is part of quality control process. Quality control is part of QA. It's like an onion with different layers. So whoever joins Scrum team at the end of the day becomes a QA engineer, because you have to support processes, you have to affect the team. There are certain practices you have to implement inside the Scrum team to preclude over bottlenecks and to test tools. Then I should probably say that when a person joins a Scrum team, first he becomes a QA engineer to build a process, and then becomes also a tester. I do not distinguish between a QA engineer and tester. I mean, we are encroaching into a separate subject. QA engineering includes QA as well. If anything, I'll be in the lobby, but I guess we still got some minutes left. Thank you, Igor. You're welcome. The last but one slide reminded me of a joke about quality assurance and are you sure of this? What's the maximum delta between CMMI and TMMI? What to make sure that nothing burns down? I don't think you can upgrade to TMMI by bypassing CMMI, because it depends on development. You can't get a big head start. You gotta develop a whole infrastructure for information collection, and it develops as the company develops. I guess there is a minimum delta, but it will be on the heroism of some testers. It's heroism, not common practice. Shall we take one more? Time's up. This guy always asks smart questions. He's been paid. Yeah, I got paid off for this. What do you think? Should we strive to should we try to improve the processes as a team, or should we stay at an individual level? Awesome question. In some business realities, we have to realize that if business is not prepared for a leap forward, it doesn't freaking need this. If you promote CI/CD, but if your business is a kiosk, I mean, you don't have a lot of money. So this becomes known at a higher level where greater budgets are involved, where there's more transparency. When you are inside a team, it's more or less decided for you. In other words, you don't need to improve it all along. You reach a certain level and no need to put your foot in another level. So it's like a Russian doll. Business, R&D, and testing. Business, the determinant for features, and business maturity should determine the development maturity. Okay, let's make a selfie. It's been a while.